Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a look at covalent compounds. So this is part of our chemistry unit. And so covalent compounds are one of the types of compounds we can have, and the other one is ionic. So the first thing that we need to know about covalent compounds is what elements make them up. If we take a look at our periodic table, we'll notice that we have a lot of these non-metals all over here. And so our covalent compounds are going to be made of two nonmetals. And the other important piece of information is, are they going to share electrons or are they going to steal electrons? So our covalent compounds are going to be sharing electrons with each other. So one very common example I'm sure you've heard of is water. So water is made up of an oxygen and two hydrogens, like this. And our oxygen has 6 valence electrons. So if we draw our oxygen, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the idea is it needs these 2 electrons somehow to fill its octet. So what it's going to want to do is it's going to want to find some hydrogens. We know that hydrogens look like this. They just have 1 valence electron. And so what oxygen is going to do is it's going to come together and it's going to attach onto the oxygen. And we're going to get something that looks like this. So now we have a covalent compound. So how do we actually name covalent compounds? The first thing that we do is when we have it, we need prefixes. So over here in this table, we have a whole list of our prefixes that we use for covalent compounds, all the way from 1 to 10. And an example of this is if I wrote out a compound like C2O4. If we look at this, we'll notice that we have 2 carbons and we have 4 oxygens. So if I were to write this out as a name, we would think of it as dicarbon, because there's 2. And I just pulled the di from the table on the right. And then we have 4 oxygen. So we're going to have tetra in front of it. And then ox. And for all our covalent compounds, the ending of the second term is going to be "ide." So instead of tetraoxygen, it's tetraoxide, and it actually sounds nicer if you say it out loud as well. All right, so let's look at another one that's a little bit different. If we have something like HS, we'll notice we only have 1 hydrogen and 1 sulfur. And instead of writing monohydrogen monosulfide, because mono is our prefix for 1, we actually don't write a prefix for the first word if it's just 1. So in this case, we would write hydrogen, and then we have mono, because there's 1 sulfide. And once again, the ending will be IDE. So this is very important for our compound names. All right, so let's go through a couple more examples. So if I gave us one that was P5N3, how can we go about naming this? So feel free to pause the video if you want to try it yourself. So the first thing that we'll notice is we have 5 phosphorus. So that means we're going to need a prefix. And if we look at our table up here, the prefix for 5 is penta. So we're going to have penta is going to be first. And then that was phosphorus. So it's going to be penta phosphorus. And then our second one, which is our nitride, we have 3. And our prefix for 3 is tri. So we have pentaphosphorus tri, ni, and then it ends with IDE. So just like that. Next one, let's take a look at Si, F4. So once again, our very first element in this compound has 1. And if we remember, we don't write mono if it's the first one, just on the second one. So in this case, we'll write silicone, so Si is silicone. And then we'll notice we have 4 fluorines. So we need to look at our chart, check what 4 is. It is tetra. So then in front, we're going to put silicone, tetra, and then if you remember our ending, it's going to be fluoride. Just like that. So we can also take a look at ones with a couple other different elements we haven't seen yet, maybe like boron. If we look at something like this, if we notice how many borons we have, it's just 1. And our rule for the first element with 1, no mono. So I'm just going to write boron. And then we have our chlorines. However, we have 3, so we do need a prefix. So it's going to be tri, chlor, and then IDE, like normal. So we can also consider this the other way. What if somebody gave you the name of a compound and asked you to write the formula for a covalent compound? So let's put that to the test. So if I said to you, I have sulfur, hexabromide. First thing that you're going to do is take a look at your first one. We have sulfur. There's nothing in front of it. That tells us that it would have just been 1. So we have sulfur, and you can always check your periodic table for what symbol's used for the element. So we have sulfur. We don't actually write a little 1 there because there's always an imaginary 1. And then we have hexabromide. So we know bromide is Br. And then we need to figure out, well, what does hexa give us? If we look at our table, hexa refers to 6. So that means there has to be 6 bromides. Just like that. I'll give you one other one like this. What if we had iodine, hepta, fluoride? All right, so same idea. If we look at iodine, there is no prefix. It's the first word. That tells us it had to have been 1. So iodide is just an I. That's its symbol. And then we have heptafluoride. So if we take a look at our table, we would notice that hepta tells us there's 7. So we have F, and we have 7 of them. So what's really nice about this is you can pretty much just pull the numbers right from the words because of those prefixes. So if I said I have a dichlorine, heptoxide, we can do exactly that. So I know I have a chlorine, and I also know I have oxygen, but I need to just figure out how many. I have di in front of chlorine, so that's telling me there's 2. And in front of oxide, I have hepta. So that is going to tell me there's 7. All right. So this is how you take a look at covalent compounds. This is how you would name them, write their chemical formula, and just remember their properties are going to be 2 nonmetals. So if you have a mixture of compounds, make sure it's 2 nonmetals before naming it. And hopefully this makes more sense. Feel free to check out the video on ionic compounds, and definitely subscribe above to follow along for some more math videos as well as science.